Hello, dear children. I hope you all are fine. We had started with Newton's second law of motion. I had explained you what is actually linear momentum. We said linear momentum is the product of mass and velocity. We studied what is rate of change of momentum, which is also the product of mass and acceleration. Then we saw few things like when the acceleration is produced, it's proportional to the acceleration which is produced in a body by a given mass is proportional to the force applied to it, as well as force which is needed to produce a given acceleration of the body is directly proportional to the mass of the body. Then we saw the SI and the CGS units for force, that's with respect to mass and acceleration, which is 1 Newton and 1 dyne, and then 1 Newton equals to 10 raised to 5 dyne. Now today we will be starting Newton's second law of motion in terms of rate of change of momentum. Now we studied that rate of change of momentum is what? It is the product of mass and acceleration. So when we say that when force is applied to a body, it will be producing an acceleration. Of course, when I apply force to a body, of course it will be giving me an acceleration, and because it is giving me an acceleration, because it is giving me the acceleration, there will be a change in the velocity, and also the momentum of the body will change. So here we can say many things are there. Force applied to a body, it will be producing an acceleration. Okay, force applied produces an acceleration in the body, and because of which the velocity changes as well as the momentum also changes. So here we can say that from the equation 3.4, the rate of change of momentum is equal to the product of mass and acceleration. So just we will see equation 3.4, what is it? So here this is equation 3.4, which is telling me rate of change of momentum is mass into acceleration, which is m into a. Okay, so here what did I get it? It's given by delta p upon delta t equals to m into a. Delta p upon delta t is nothing but the rate of the change of momentum. So delta p upon delta t equal to mass into acceleration. So from this equation 3.8 which is there, okay, so here we have equation number 3.8, which is force into mass into acceleration, force equal to mass into acceleration. So we will be writing it as force is nothing but it's the rate of change of momentum, which is delta p upon delta t, which is delta mv upon delta t. Why delta p is equal to mv? Because momentum is product of mass and velocity. So delta p is delta m into v upon delta t, which is m, which remains constant, delta v upon delta t. So what is delta v upon delta t? It's acceleration, that is rate of change of velocity with respect to time. So delta v upon delta t gives me a if mass remains constant. So Newton's second law of motion can be stated in terms of change in momentum as follows. So we started with the rate of change of momentum, that is how the force was applied to a body. Force was applied to a body, so this body, it suffered an acceleration with respect to the, because there was a change in the velocity with respect to time. So we gave it with the formula delta p upon delta t equal to m into a. So here from the equation 3.8, we took it as Newton's second law of motion, which is F equal to m into a. So force is rate of change of momentum, that is delta p upon delta t. What is delta p? Delta m into v. So we take mass constant, so delta v upon delta t gives me acceleration, which is m into a. So Newton's second law of motion can be stated in terms of change in momentum as follows. So what is second law of motion? According to Newton's second law of motion, the rate of change of momentum of a body is directly proportional to the force applied on it. So rate of change of momentum, what is rate of change of momentum? Which is given as this, that's given as mass into acceleration. So rate of change of momentum is directly proportional to the force applied on it, and the change in the momentum takes place in the direction in which the force is applied. So Newton's second law states that the rate of change of momentum, that is proportional to the force which is applied to it, and this change in momentum, okay, this change in momentum will be taking place where? In the direction of the force applied. Okay, so that is called as Newton's second law of motion. So many things, to just study one Newton's second law of motion, so many things we studied. We first studied what is called as momentum, which was important for us, right? We studied that momentum is nothing but the product of mass and velocity. Then we saw the suppositions, like what are the conditions, like with the atomic particles what will happen, then how the rate of change of momentum is taking place, which is mass into acceleration, initial momentum, final momentum, all these change, that is a change in the momentum. Okay, these things we studied, and finally we came towards the Newton's second law of motion, which states what? That the rate of change of momentum, okay, that is the rate of change of momentum means the final momentum minus the initial momentum, which gives you mass into acceleration. It's directly proportional to how much amount of force you will apply, and this change will be taking place where? Only in the direction of the force. So that's called as Newton's second law of motion. Now here we go towards the explanation of this law. So here, according to Newton's second law of motion, what did we get? We saw that F is nothing but F is equal to delta P upon delta T. So here just you can see I have just summarized Newton's second law. Rate of change of momentum directly proportional to the force applied on it, and this change of momentum will be taking place where? In the direction of the force applied. Now just to see, according to second law, we say that F equals to delta P by delta T, right? That is a change in the momentum. So F equal to delta P by delta T. What is delta P? Delta mv upon delta T. Okay, so here this is a general form of second law of equation. So we have delta mv upon delta T. It's a second general form of it. Now Newton's second law of motion says that momentum will be there if there is a change in the momentum. The momentum changes either due to change in the mass or change in the velocity, or both in the change in the mass and velocity. This also we studied, right? When can when can there be a change in the momentum? The change in the momentum, okay, there can be a change in delta P when there is a change in mass m, and when there is a change in velocity, or there is a change in both mass and velocity. That time the we can say that the momentum will change. Okay, so here it is observed that the mass of the particle, okay, it is increasing with the increase in velocity, but it becomes perceptible only when the velocity of the particle is comparable to the velocity of light, which is 3 into 10 raised to 8 meter per second. So we say that the mass of the particle, okay, what happens? As the mass of the particle increases, there is an increase in the velocity, right? In mass of the particle increases with increase in velocity, but it becomes perceptible. That means it becomes applicable when the velocity of the particle is comparable with the speed of the light. So this criteria, that is the mass of particle increases with the velocity, with the increase in velocity, will be applicable when there will be the velocity of light will be equal to compared with the velocity, that is the speed of the light, when the velocity of the particle is compared with the speed of light. So at velocities where v is greater than c, okay, so when v is greater than c, that means when the velocity is greater than 10 raised to 6 meter per second, change in the mass is not perceptible. Okay, not perceptible. So here we have seen that when v is equal to 10 raised to 6 meter per second, m equals to some value m0, and when this is 10 raised to 7, m0 is the mass at v equal to 0. So here we say that when the velocity, okay, when the velocity of light, when the velocity of the particle is less than the velocity of the light, the change in the mass is not applicable. So at such velocities v will be when v velocity is less than c, mass n can be considered to be constant. So what they are trying to say is, so we can say that at velocities, when the velocities are less than the velocity of light, that is c, that is v is less than 10 raised to 6, there is no change in the mass. There will be no change in the mass. And at such velocities, that is when the velocity is less than the velocity of light, mass can be considered to be constant. Okay, so here Newton's second law is in the form that F equals to m into delta V upon delta T m into A. So we can say that F equals to m into A can be true only when if there are two conditions are needed. First condition, velocities are much less than the velocity of light. So the velocity should be very less than the velocity of light, the velocity of the particle. And secondly, the mass should be constant. The mass should be remaining constant even if the velocities are increasing. So Newton's second law is a fundamental law of motion. Okay, the first law of motion is also included to the second law. Let's see how. So just I will just quickly take you towards this paragraph again. Now it is observed that mass of the particle is increasing with the increase in the velocity, but it becomes applicable when the what I am trying to say is, if the mass of the particle is increasing, velocity also will increase. When is this possible? Only when the velocity of the light is compared to the velocity of this particle. Now, if the velocity of the particle is less than the velocity of the light, then what will happen? Then mass will remain constant and this Newton's law will be applicable. Now, let us see how to obtain the Newton's first law of motion from the second law. From Newton's second law, we say F equal to ma. So, if F is 0, acceleration will also be 0. Right? This means that if no force is applied on the body, the acceleration will be 0. If the body is at rest, it will remain at rest, and if it is moving, it will move in the same direction. Thus, with a body which is not acted upon by an external force does not change its state of rest or motion. So, this is the statement of Newton's first law of motion. So, we have obtained the first law of motion from the second law. So, if the second law F equals to ma, F becomes 0, acceleration becomes 0, means what? No force, no acceleration. Right? No force, no acceleration. If a body is at rest, okay, if a body is at rest, when we apply an external force, what happens? The body starts moving. This is what is the first law. So, from the second law, we have derived the first law. We have got the first law. Then examples of second law of motion in our daily life, which will make you more clearer about it. Till now, we did the two laws. First law states that whenever a body is at rest or the body is moving, we have to apply an external force. We will just see the statement again. We have to apply an external force, and then only the body will start moving. With respect to that, we studied many new things also, inertia of rest, inertia of motion, that also we studied with the when we were studying about Newton's first law of motion. Yes, what is the first law? Body is in state of rest, it will remain in state of rest. Body is in motion, it will remain in state of motion only when, unless an external force is applied to it. So this is the first law. Second law, what is it telling us? Rate of change of momentum is directly proportional to the force applied. Right? Force applied on it, and its change in momentum will take place only in the direction of the force applied. So now let us see the example. Now the mathematical expression of the second law, we are already clear with it. F equal to delta p by delta t, or delta mv upon delta t. So it gives me what? Delta p equals to F delta t. So if there is a given change in momentum of the body, can be brought about either by applying a large force for a smaller duration or by applying a small force for a longer duration. Now let us see how is this possible. Now, when for example, if I want to move this particular body, okay, either I can apply a large force. So if I apply a large force, it will be for small duration, or if I apply a small force, it can go towards the long duration. So how is this possible? For example, in hitting a cricket ball by a bat, or hammering a nail, or hitting the ping pong ball by a racket, what do? A required momentum is imparted to the body by applying a force of large magnitude for a short duration. When you are hitting a six, what do? You apply a large momentum, you apply a large force, and it will be covering in a short duration. That means in a short duration, you hit a six and that goes off the boundary. So that's a short duration. On other hand, in the following examples, the momentum of the moving body is brought to zero in a large duration so as to reduce the effect of force exerted by the moving body. So I'll explain you this. For example, now let us take the example of a ball. So this is a ball which is hitting the boundary, right? So this, we have applied a large force. In a small duration, it has hit the boundary, right? So here what they are trying to say, that in the following example, the momentum comes to zero. Why it comes to zero? Because the body comes at rest, right? And it reduces the effect of the force. So we say that in the following examples, this is the explanation. Momentum is brought about by zero in a large duration so as to reduce the effect of the force exerted by the moving body. Okay, so the moving body is brought to rest in a large duration so as to reduce the effect of force. Now when we are here, what did we do? We applied a large force and the body has come to rest. Now when we are talking about the momentum of the body is brought to zero in a large duration. In a large duration means what? When we are for example, we are applying a small force for a large duration. That means, let us say that moving a small table towards a large duration. So what do? We apply smaller forces. When we are applying smaller forces, what happens? The momentum of the body is brought to zero. How to zero? By slowly pushing it again at rest, by slowly pushing it again at rest. So this is the explanation, and reduces the effect of force exerted by the moving body. Okay, now let us see in examples how it will be clearer. Now see here, while catching a ball, the cricketer withdraws his hands along the ball. So this is the same explanation I will give you. Now Here let u be the velocity of the ball, okay, of mass m when it reaches the hands of the player. So here initial momentum of the ball was mu, right? Initial momentum means when the ball is in motion. When the cricketer stops the ball, okay, final momentum m into 0. Why? Because he has held it in his hand, okay, so that time it became 0, right? When the ball came to the hand of the person, say this is the ball, so when the ball came towards the hand of the person, its momentum became its velocity became 0, so final momentum 0, initial momentum will be mu, final momentum will be 0. So change in momentum is nothing but mu minus mu. Minus mu, negative sign, indicates that the change in the momentum is the direction opposite to the initial. Here when I am holding it and holding it like this, sorry, when I am holding it like this, so what happens? Motion, and then it came to my hand, so what happens? 0. So my when I'm holding it in my hand, my direction is opposite. Are you understanding? Means the pen is falling like this, but when I'm holding, what is happening? The direction, it's opposite, the force is opposite, right? So direction opposite to the initial direction of motion. So if the cricketer does not pull back his hands and stop the ball, as soon as it touches his hand, he uses very little time to stop the ball. Okay, let us say that uh, when you are catching the ball, okay, when you catch the ball, what happens? You take your hand at the back, if little at the back, and then you catch it. Okay, for example, I am hitting a ball, I hit a ball towards you, you will catch the ball, but your hand might go little backwards, a little bit backwards, right? But in a case we can say that if the cricketer does not pull his hands back, okay, simply the ball has come to his hand and it has stopped, but he has not taken his hand back, okay, then the force which he exerts on the ball of the hands of the cricketer is F1, which is mu upon T1. But if the cricketer pulls back his hand along the ball, he takes a much longer time, T2, to stop the ball. Okay, just see now I'll just draw randomly and show you that this is the ball. Okay, these are the hands, for example. Please ignore the drawing. So if the ball has hit, he has caught the ball. Okay, now he did not take his hands backwards. No, he did not take it. So it came at rest. The ball came at rest. So here, what is the change in the momentum? Mu upon T1, and F1 equal to mu upon T1. Now here, in the second case, he caught the ball and his hands went back. This will be T2. Now see here, immediately T1 less time, here T2. Why? Because the ball will come back and his hand will go back, so T2 time. So F2 equals to mu upon T2. So here T2 will be greater than T1. Of course T2 will be greater. Why? Because he caught the ball and then he withdraws his hands backwards, so it becomes T2. Then who will be having more force, F2 or F1? F2, right? Force exerted on the hands of the cricketer by the fast moving ball is less when he withdraws the hand, right? F2, sorry, F2 will be less, I'm so sorry. F2 which is there, it will be less than F1. F1 will be greater. Why? Because on his hand the ball will hit very harder it will hit, but here it will be little lighter, force will be little lighter. Why? Because he is withdrawing his hands back. Thus the cricketer avoids the chances of injury to his palms by withdrawing his hands along with the moving ball while catching it. So now here, how is the Newton's second law justified? Okay, let us see how it is justified. First point, they say that the rate of change of momentum is directly proportional to the force applied. So more the momentum, more the force, right? Then this change in momentum, there is a change in the momentum which is taking, that is initial, from the initial to final momentum there is a change, and that change is what? That change is seen when he is withdrawing his hands back, right? We can say that when he is withdrawing the hands back, it's in the direction of the force applied, right? Are you understanding? He's taking his hand back, that means what? Direction of the force applied. But this person who is holding it like this, he's stopping the motion, so he's getting hurt. But this person, he's going along with the motion, Okay, so this is what is the explanation. Now I will just read it for once so that you understand it. So here, if the cricketer does not pull his back hands and stops the ball as soon as it touches his hand, he uses very little time to stop the ball. But if the cricketer pull backs his hand along with the ball, he takes much longer time to stop the ball. So T2 is greater than T1, right? Here, who has taken his hands back? T2. Therefore, F2 is less than F1. The force exerted by the hands of the cricketer by the fast moving ball is less when he withdraws his hand. Thus, cricketer avoids the chances of injury by withdrawing his hands along with the moving ball, that is along with the direction of the force applied. Okay, then second example, athletes often land on the sand after taking a high jump. When the athletes land from a height on a hard floor, he may hurt his feet because his feet comes to rest almost instantaneously. So what does he do? That is a very short interval time. So a very large force is exerted by the floor on his feet, right? So if he in a long jump, if he runs and he just jumps on the ground, he will be jumping from above and immediately his body will come to rest. So he might suffer an injury on his feet. On other hand, if the sand is put, if he lands on a sand or a foam, his feet are pushes the sand for some distance, right? His feet penetrates into that sand and creates a penetration or creates a depression in that. So therefore what happens? The time duration in which the feet comes to rest increases, and as a result the force exerted on the feet decreases and is saved from getting hurt. So again the same Newton's second law of motion justified here, right? What happens? There is a change in the momentum. He is running, his force is more, but he creates a depression downwards. Okay, when once the depression is created, what happens? There is a change in the momentum which takes place, and when that depression is created over there, when he lands on the sand and the depression is created, okay, the force exerted on his feet decreases and he is saving from getting hurt. And the third one, when the glass vessels are falling on the hard floor, they break, but when they fall on the soft carpet, they don't. When a glass vessel falls from the height on the hard floor, it comes to rest immediately. Okay, so what happens? The floors will be exerting a large force on the vessel and it breaks. But if it falls on a carpet, the time duration in which it comes on the vessel, when it lands on the vessel, is the time duration in the vessel to come at rest is more, right? Which increases, and so the carpet will be exerting a very less force on the vessel and it does not break. So these are the three examples. So when it is falling on the hard on a hard floor, immediately it is coming to rest, so it will break. A large force is exerted by the by the floor. But when the floor is of sand or foam or anything or a carpet, so what happens? A less force is exerted on it, and that is the reason it does not crack immediately. So I hope these all are very clear. There are some drawbacks that I can't there are some drawbacks while explaining you like this. If you have any queries, you can just call me up and you can ask for the explanation. I'll explain you again, no problem with it, but just go through the video once properly. Okay, thank you children.